Hello. So let's see if I can figure this thing out this time. Usually I'm here. Usually I do this. It's with someone else, like Dr. Rush or Bradley Metrock or someone else. But I'm gonna try to see if I can figure this out. So okay. Okay. So hope everyone is well. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah. Hope everyone's doing well. Um, I'll wait a little bit to get a couple more viewers to go over what I'm going to be talking about today. It's basically about this book I just wrote, and what this means, and what I'd like to see, kind of to with this book, and why I did it, and then hopefully like how we can get spread the word and get more awareness of OI, and then we'll kind of see how it goes. So we got so the name of the book that I did is called The OI Connection. It's a it's a basically a digital multi-touch book. It's basically it's a collection of stories from and perspectives of people in different OI communities, and looking at it from different angles. Basically, people who treat the OI, people who treat it, you know, people like Dr. Rush, people who research like Dr. Rush, people who are surgeons like Dr. Esposito, Dr. Fassier. Um, there are also advocacy uh, leaders in there like Tracy Hart, who's the CEO of the OI Foundation. There's adults in there. There's teens with OI, adults with OI, and it's basically it's a collaboration of just all these different perspectives. So we'll the the idea is that what this is a so the name of the book is The OI Connection, Osteogenesis Imperfecta in the 21st Century, Global Multimedia Perspectives for the Medical and General Public. So that's a lot, it's a mouthful. But if you look at it and what we're doing, it's basically because what have we all been saying for years? It's that nobody really knows about OI. The medical community doesn't know about OI. So many things have changed in the last 20, 30 years, but the medical community hasn't kept up on all these changes because what's happening is we're learning so much more about it these days, and this information needs to get out. So I figured kind of like put this out there, it might be an easy way to kind of get this information out to medical professionals also as well. Um, also to get information to people that don't have it. So I thought this was a good tool to kind of do that, to see to kind of help spread the word, and to kind of show medical professionals what's new, but also to see how OI has changed over the last 50, 60 years. One of the things that I learned was like I learned a lot of you put this all together and you learn a lot of perspectives and you see the bigger picture. Because I'm more of a big picture guy, kind of like to see when you kind of take a step back and see what's happening. It's kind of amazing. You kind of come with you come to all these interesting observations and conclusions. So one of the things is that talking to people who grew up with OI where they didn't have things like social media, the internet. They just kind of had to figure it out on their own. So that was a big challenge for them to figure things on their own, and to kind of see how that's evolved over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, about how these networks have formed and how they've kind of connected, because that's going to be the buzzword here, that being connected is going to be the change that is going to be what we want to see to get to where we want to go. So if we look at that word kind of connection, it's you look at OI and you think basically when you think of OI, people think, okay, it's brittle bones and blue sclera. That's kind of what we're taught in like medical school. And I talk about this, like my parents are both physicians. about 40 years ago, they kind of learned that brittle bones, blue sclera. Then like 20 years ago, when I was in medical school, they were kind of telling me the same thing. My brothers, who are both physicians as well, my younger brothers, 10, 7 years respectively, they're kind of taught the same things. And the medical students I'm teaching today are still telling me, yeah, they get about a slide of it. They talk about a little bit of blue sclera, broken bones, fragile bones, and that's about it. And maybe the Sillence typing criteria. So it's kind of like, but so much has changed. They think that oh well, there was only 4 types of OI, but actually there's actually now currently like 27 genes identified with OI, and that's changing and changing, and they're discovering more every day. So we got to keep like keep that up to date. It's the speed of information that we're getting here. So my thing is like I want to redefine how we look at OI, because you look at OI and everyone says brittle bones, but if you look at it, it's like then you say, well, it's really a collagen disorder where there's either faulty collagen or there's not enough collagen or maybe some combination of both. But if you look at what collagen is really connective tissue. So there's that word again, connective tissue, and faulty connections or lack of. So think about that. So if you have lack of connections, lack of faulty thing, that's what causes all the issues with OI. It's kind of like a metaphor or kind of an example of what's, if you look at like with people who are dealing with it like 20, 30 years ago, it's because they didn't have connections, whether it was like through networks, local support groups, or national support groups, or global support groups, through like the internet or through these online support groups or other things. So what we're saying today, though, is like that we're connecting through digital networks, through local community resources, through local OI advocacy organizations, through using like social media, the internet, through local resources, through local communities, and their organizations. So that's kind of like, so if we reconnect that, we connect together, we collaborate. These are the things that we need to do to get more awareness, to get better treatments, better services for for children, adults, teens, medical professionals, everyone. So the whole thing, this is what we're trying to do here, is basically start a movement where it's about 4 C's. So it's about connection, that we talked about that. Collaboration. So you collaborate with your local physicians, team care. That's an important thing for each individual person who's affected by OI, because one thing that we've learned is that each individual person with OI has their own unique challenges. So it's about context. That's the third thing. Context is because they are, depending on where they live, depending on what their access to medical resources are, medical professionals, they all have individual context-based solutions, and it needs to be compassionate. Because the other thing that I've experienced, our family's experienced, as well as I know I've talked to so many families, is that a lot of times the ego and the pride of medical professionals of either there's a lot of either part of it is ignorance, part of it's arrogance, or that combination where they don't want to learn anything, because medicine is a constantly evolving field. We're always kind of learning new things. So we need to improve that to kind of educate medical professionals. But at the same time, medical professionals need to be willing to learn what's new, what's working, what's not working, and and from different organizations. So one of the examples of how they're doing that is they have the Brittle Bone Consortium. And that's, if anyone affected by OI is not signed up for that registry, I would recommend signing up for that, because it is going to help our researchers understand OI better, so they can develop better treatments and therapies and understand OI in ways never before. So that is important. So that's part of that collaboration that we were talking about earlier. So if we do all these things, I think then we can kind of really make some changes. So that is kind of part of what this is. So I kind of, that's what this book is. So the way this book that I wrote is basically, I collected a bunch of perspectives. So if you look at it, the first section of the book is mostly from the medical aspects. So we look at things like obstetrics, pediatrics, things like how to handle how NICU staff should be handling newborns, newborn care, fracture care for newborns and young children. We look at things like surgical perspectives and pediatric aspects. We look at physical therapy, occupational therapy, genetics, and just clinical care, clinical management. So all these things are going to be important, as far as, basically getting medical professionals just willing to learn this. I mean, it's not an in-depth, this book isn't basically an in-depth kind of medical management of the OI patient, because everyone has their individual. How's that? Thanks. Apparently I was sideways, I guess literally and figuratively. I would say, let's get back to the thing here. So what I was talking about was the first section was mostly medical. Then as it goes into the second section, it's mostly advocacy organizations around the world. We talk about like how people are advocating for OI awareness around the world, and what people can do to kind of raise awareness in their local and local communities to kind of help people understand OI. The last part, the third section, is kind of mostly just kind of like a lot of individual narratives, stories, because I think the best thing is to share our stories, that way people can understand challenges, specific challenges that we have, what we're dealing with, and then that kind of makes a difference in that awareness. So that's important. So what, let's see, I had a couple other things here. Let's see. So the other thing is just helping to share this, and my goal. So let me get to what my goal of doing all this is. Well, obviously it's because my son, in case you didn't know, my son Ethan, he's 7 years old. He's got OI type 3/4 by DNA, and because of all, we've been very fortunate to connect with great medical professionals and other parents and other people who've kind of helped us along the way. So what we did because of his treatments, when we first found about his diagnosis, it was, well, we hear all these like negative prognosis. Oh, he's got this lethal skeletal dysplasia. He's not going to live, and then he's not going to walk, or he's going to have difficulty with eating, and or he's never going to do any of these things. But fortunately, we connected with the right people and the right professionals. I mean, it takes a lot of trial and error. It's not easy. You go a couple steps forward and then several steps back. But when you finally get to the right teams, and that's really important, then that's what makes all the difference. So don't just get discouraged. Keep looking. There are medical professionals and people who are willing to help and get you on and other medical people, as well as parents and other people who can guide you in the right direction. So I would say don't get discouraged. And because we got the right people and the right resources, he's doing really well. He's now 7 years old. He's in second grade.